Chapter 6, Lesson 2. So we're going to keep on talking about the Chapter 6 topic, which is networks. But please remember to let me know if you have any questions about any information that is in these videos that are uploaded. So let's keep going through this section. So what is a VPN? So a VPN is a method of allowing a remote computer to connect securely to a private network using external resources. So an example of the use of a VPN, let's say for example you have a company or business that has its own private network, and let's say we have an employee who is working from home, but that employee wants to access the information on the private network that is actually located at the business or company. Okay, so the person is physically not at the company or business at the moment, but they want to still access the information on the private network of that business or company. Then this person can use a VPN to actually access the information on that private network from their own computer or laptop, for example. So that is a VPN. Who would use a VPN? VPNs are often used by organizations to provide LAN resources to traveling employees. So if employees traveling, they want to access information on their business network, then they can use their computer or laptop to access that information via a VPN. Also, employees who want to telework, so that's working from home, and users that want to access LAN resources at home. Or it could be used by users who want to access data on a home computer while away. They can also use a VPN. So if we, for example, were not at home, we were also traveling, that we want to access information on our home computer, then we can use our laptop, maybe for example, via a VPN to access information on our home computer without actually being physically at our home computer. So these are just some examples of the use of a VPN. So how does one connect to a VPN, and what can happen once a connection is made? To connect to a VPN, a user remotely logs onto the network. Once the user's identity has been authenticated, the VPN's tunneling protocol sets up an encrypted link to the user's computer. Data can then be transmitted securely. So a user just logs onto the network remotely from a computer or laptop, for example. So they'll be given some login details, maybe like a username or a password. Once that has been authenticated, then an encrypted link is set up between the user's computer and the private network, and then data can be transmitted between the computer and the private network. So once they connect to the VPN, the remote computer then has access to the LAN's resources, secure access, just as if it were directly connected to the LAN. What are the advantages and disadvantages of using a VPN? So advantages: there is a high level of security for data transmission over the internet. The use of external resources. Okay, so users do not need to purchase or implement security, dedicated connections, etc. for users to access the network. Okay, so if you're using a VPN, you don't have to buy, you don't have to purchase or maintain the connections that are involved in a VPN or the security that is involved. That is all handled externally. Cost of maintaining the external resources is covered by someone else. The disadvantages, however, because it's dependent on external resources, okay, that we won't, or the people that are using the VPN do not have control over, such as the security or the connections, the performance of your VPN may not be able to be controlled. Okay, so it might be unstable sometimes, maybe sometimes it works perfectly, but that is all dependent on the external resources. And you need technical expertise to set up and maintain a VPN. So these are advantages and disadvantages of using a VPN or virtual private network. What is an intranet? What are some characteristics of it? So intranet, you might recognize this was from IGCSE. So the definition: it's a privately owned network that uses internet technology such as web pages for internal use within the organization. So a intranet kind of like it's the same as using like a browser, but it's just a browser that you can go through that has information pertaining to that company only, for example. So if you think of like Specsavers, Vodacom, schools and universities, they all have intranets that people can log into and they browse through the university, school network, just as if they were like using the internet. It's got that same feel. Characteristics. So on the intranet, there's information such as news, events, common documents, etc. on the intranet. You can email and use instant messaging on the intranet. And you can watch videos and send corporate messages. So videos and corporate messages can be streamed and watched on an intranet. What is the structure of an intranet? So usually it has a client-server architecture. So in the previous video, a client-server network is a network of computers where a server controls or manages how the network functions. So that is the network architecture of an intranet. So there's several servers that could be involved in an intranet. So you could have a web server that hosts the intranet web pages. You can have an email server that handles the email communication. And you can have another server that might handle the accounts and access to that intranet. Only information relevant to the organization is available on this intranet. So only information pertaining to that company is found on this type of network. And it's only for internal use. So that means there's increased security and confidentiality. So for example, on intranet you have to have a username and password to access this type of network. So there is better security, etc. What is an extranet? So an extranet is just an intranet which is open to allow external users access. So this is very similar to a VPN. It might actually sound kind of the same, but remember, VPN is just a method for a remote computer to connect to a network. But an extranet is pretty much just a type of network where a user might use a VPN to connect to an intranet. So an extranet uses VPNs to allow users access. So they access the internet using an email password. So they might go on the internet, and to access the intranet, they will log in with an email and a password, and they'll then have access to the resources on the intranet. And so again, a VPN is a virtual private network. So an extranet might use the method of VPN to access resources on an intranet. Okay, so an intranet is a privately owned network, such as at a company or organization. An extranet is just the type of network that allows you to access the intranet from a remote computer. So it will use the method of a VPN to do so, for example. What is the World Wide Web? So the World Wide Web is an information system comprising of documents, images, videos, and sounds. It uses the internet as its base, so you know www. That is the World Wide Web. Users access this information through websites and web pages, which are accessed through the use of a web browser. So if you want to access information on the internet, you would use a web browser to do so. What is the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? Alright, so these are closely connected. Sometimes they could get confused as to which is which. So just remember, the internet is the physical infrastructure. It is a network of computers. So all the computers connected together that make up the internet, those form the internet. So it's a network of computers. However, the World Wide Web is the information system which uses the internet as the medium or base through which this data is accessed. So the actual data that is provided by the network of computers, that is called the World Wide Web. But the internet is the actual physical infrastructure. It's just the network of computers. Cool, so that is the end of the lesson. Please let me know if you have any questions.